Welcome to Living My Breastless Life podcast. I'm your host, HPG. On season 3 of the podcast, we're diving into the helping profession. As a social worker for 20 years turned life coach, I am so inspired by why people choose to help others as a career. I have found that almost always there's a catalytic event that leads people to help others. I most certainly had that experience in my journey. There are so many amazing and talented folks who make the helping profession shine so bright, and I have found a lot of them. You'll hear a variety of folks share what they do, why they do it, and the unique ways that they help. This season will mostly be guest interviews with some fascinating people and a few surprises for y'all along the way. So let's go. On episode 43, I had the pleasure of talking with Bill from Just Today Coaching. Bill has been sober for 13 years. He knows the ins and outs of AA and believes that there is not one absolute path to recovery. Bill talks about the services he provides and also shares a bit about his podcast, Sober, Not Mature. Bill and I talk about group coaching services, a collaboration that I am very grateful to be a part of, and how it was born. I love our chat, and I think you will too. So, Bill, I would love to hear a little bit about what you do and what led you to it.
There's a couple of things that I do, but on the coaching side of things, the name of the organization that I started up was Just for Today Coaching Services. And the way that I got into that, I've been around recovery and I've been sober for a little over 13 years. I got sober on April 18th of 2010. And during that time frame, I've worked in different industry sales and I was in the debt collection business for years, but I was introduced to a 12-step program at that time. And of course, a big part of that 12-step program is helping other people. So throughout the years, I've had the opportunity through that process, obviously to work with people and help people. And I had it in my mind that it might be something I wanted to do, as a profession or on a different level, I guess is the best way to put it. So probably a couple years ago, I started thinking about it, looking into it. And then my buddy Mike and I started a podcast about a year and a half ago. And with that, we joined Instagram and I started to realize and see how huge the sober community is. I did start to see a lot of people that were doing, coaching, and it wasn't just sober coaching, it was life coaching in all these different areas. And I was not real happy with the industry and the position that I was in as I'll say my quote unquote normal job. So it got to a point where I was, kind of planning towards it, started building things in the background. And then in June, I left my full-time job and was, with the plan of focusing on the coaching business for a few months, plus also on the podcast. And we've got an e-commerce store, but mainly in the opportunity or given the opportunity to build the website and the coaching business and that sort of thing. So that's what I've been doing over the last few months. And, quite honestly, it is something that depending on how things line up, I don't necessarily have to do it as a full-time thing right away. I can do evenings, I can do weekends, I can do those sort of things and, still work a full-time job. But this 3-month period has given me the freedom and the opportunity to build up this process.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And congratulations on 13 years.
I'm super proud. We were taught when we first got sober that, time matters. I get it. The one day at a time, and we only have today and all those sort of things. I 100% not only understand that, but, subscribe to that opinion. But I also realize that, all these days that I put together, it's pushing, it's coming up on 5,000 days, which is a lot of days. And every one of those days, I still had to do the work. And yes, it gets easier to an extent, But the only reason it's easier today than it was, 13 years ago is because I've done that daily work for the last 13 years. So time matters and it's a lot of time. But then again, I've known people over the years that have, 30 and 40 and the one guy 55 years or something like that we used to go to meetings with. So it's a long time, but I don't think I'm done yet. That's the best way to put it.
I think the work is key in getting in community with others. And the work itself is not easy, but it is extremely worth it.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good thing, the word community, and that's a term that's used on social media quite a bit. The recovery community and just getting community in general. But we were taught that right off the bat that we can't do this alone, and I'm a firm believer of that. There's many different paths to sobriety. 12-step programs are not the only path. I understand that it's my path, and I still work that and work those principles and live those principles to this day. But it is my 100% complete opinion that you have to have other people in your life. You have to have help. And if you think about it, if somebody does and I'll say a normal type of therapy, some sort of mental health work, they're not doing it on their own. If somebody has a medical condition, they're not doing it on their own. So alcoholism and drug abuse is kind of a combination of both of those. You've got a condition, but you also have a mental health issue. So if you think about it that way, that's my point of saying that you can't do it alone. And on top of that, it makes it more fun. It makes it easier to be able to draw from other people and do things together as a team, or even as a small group. It's a lot better way to work at this.
Definitely. I think for me, had I known that there were sober coaches, I think that would have been a bigger catalyst. Like I was lucky to have a group, two groups actually, but I was striving for like individual connection of someone who knew what it was like. I was privileged to have therapists, and that's great. But I think someone who knows, like on a lived experience level, is really helpful. So when you're doing your coaching with folks who are wanting to get sober or who are newly sober, what type of approach do you have?
My main, I guess, goal and mindset is to be able to be, I guess, a bit of a chameleon when it comes to individuals, and I think that's huge. And I take it from the standpoint that if somebody chooses a path to recovery, they're going to be in a certain path, which is cool, And once again, do those things in the background. You could be in a 12-step program, you could be in smart recovery, you could be in therapy, you can do all those different things and still have a coach. But from the coaching side of things, and I think one of the biggest differences is it doesn't have to be a rigid type of thing. It can be a living type of relationship. And what I mean by that is that you more than likely have a different path than I do. It may be the same, but a little bit different. So let's look at that. Also, let's look at what your goals are, what your aspirations are, what you specifically need help with. For instance, on a 12-step program, and some people say, why should I use a coach when I have a sponsor? Well, technically, a sponsor in a 12-step program is only there to walk a person through the steps. That's it. That's their job and their responsibility based on the guidance of that 12-step program. Now, a lot of times sponsors are friends. They'll help you out in different areas. They might guide you through life situations, but it's not their responsibility. So that's what a coach could do. A coach can get a little bit more detailed with you on a life level and, actually dig into exactly what it is that you want, not necessarily just say, hey, here's the path that I followed, you should follow me type of thing. So to answer your question directly is I try to talk to people and figure out right off the bat, we were talking about outlines before we had started. I want to make an outline with that individual and figure out what do they want. If somebody is 12-step based, yes, we'll talk about steps. We can work through those things. If they're not 12-step based, I've got plenty of background and experience, of living sober for a number of years where I don't need to use the steps, but in general, they're in my head and they're ingrained in me, so I could use some of the principles that apply. But again, the main point is I want to take almost like a piece of clay and I want to mold a program that fits that individual rather than having that individual fit into whatever my mindset of their path is.
I think that's wonderful. I didn't really understand that a sponsor's goal or responsibility was to help a person with the steps. I'm glad you cleared that up. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and it's something that Mike and I talk about on our podcast quite a bit. Is that and both of us got sober in Cleveland, and Cleveland has really, really solid recovery when it comes to 12-step programs. It's not watered down. It's not wishy-washy. And any type of 12-step program that is that way, I'm not saying anything about that. It's just not the way that we were, taught or walked through. The people that taught us and showed us how to be sober and live sober were very structured. They were very old school. They were stern, but they were not mean. But they certainly weren't, coddling type of individuals. It's like, okay, we had a sponsor, and this is the easiest way to explain it, that said, okay, so you go to the store and you buy a box of cake mix. Okay. If you look at that, you see this pretty beautiful picture of a nice cake, at least a piece of cake on the front of the package. If you want that cake to look that way, you're going to have to follow the directions. And if you follow those directions step by step and have some concept about, okay, what does it mean to do this and mix these things together, then your cake is going to look either exactly the same or pretty darn close, right? But if you're like, whatever, I don't need an egg in there, or I can just, throw half the amount of water. Not a huge fan of milk, so I'm not going to put any of that in there. What you're going to get at the end is something that resembles a cake, but is probably not not as fulfilling, let's say, as the cake should be. So I'm a visual person, and that example, when it was explained to us, just made things so clear to me. So that's what the 12 steps are. That's what a step-by-step program is, or a 12-step recovery program is. Those steps are there for a purpose. They're there for a reason. And if you want what this individual has and the type of life they have, you're going to do these steps in order. Where, once again, from a coaching standpoint, once you have that background and that foundation in place, let's figure out what you want out of life. I'm gonna show you and help you how to live sober and navigate some of those things that you're going to come across. And I say will come across, as you stay sober and live sober.
That's a really, really good way to describe it.
Yeah, that's that sponsor of ours, and Mike and I shared a sponsor for a while. Not only a really nice guy, but had a knack of breaking things down, and in very, very simplistic terms, which is something that even to this day I still need. I can complicate anything, so I need things explained to me in a simple way, and then I'll put them into place and put them in my life.
I think that's great. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Not a problem.
So, you and I have collaborated with a group of people. Would you like to talk about that? Would you like to share anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't bring that up in the beginning part of it because I figured it was something we would get to. But so kind of stepping back a little bit, when I left my job and started the coaching side of things and was building all of this. And I'm using Instagram, and I'm using Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I completely opened up on social media. I was more anonymous, I guess, if you want to put it that way, when it came to my recovery up until this point. But for reasons, nothing I'm ashamed of, but just from a work standpoint, I wasn't as open, but now I am, and it gave me more opportunities. So in doing that, and again, in trying to get all this information out and building all this stuff in the background, the whole concept of what I would, kind of talking about, not doing this alone, working together and that sort of thing came into my mind. And I'm like, if that mindset in that concept works for me as an individual for my own recovery, it will work, or it should work in the coaching side of things too. So my thought pattern, vision, whatever you want to call it, was having basically a one-stop shop place, a website where people could go that are looking for coaching. Okay. Whether it's recovery coaching or whether it's trauma coaching. We've collaborated with an individual that does divorce recovery coaching for women who have gone through divorces, and shows them how to continue to work their life. We're working with individuals that have, like yourself, had their backgrounds in social work. Where we've got an individual that is a counselor. She deals with teens, adults, and couples, and alcohol comes up with that. Trauma could come up with that. So the point is that we now have this group of 8 people, including myself and Heather, and we've designed a website and developed all this background stuff so far. So this mindset and this vision, that we were talking about, or I was talking about, has kind of come together. So we have 8 people. Every single one of them, with the exception of one, is in recovery. The individual that does the couples counseling and that sort of thing and team counseling, she's actually my former sister-in-law. She's a really good individual, does good work, and she's the only one that is not in recovery. Everyone else is, and everyone has their own little niche, and what it provides us, and hopefully what it's going to provide individuals, is that somebody's looking for a life coach, a sober coach, a recovery coach. Even if somebody doesn't know what they're looking for, there's a really good possibility that between these 8 individuals, something's going to fit. We don't have everything for everybody. What we don't have at this point, for instance, we don't have like a performance coach or a job coach or anything like that. But I know of an individual that does that. So if somebody asked me about it, it's an individual that we had on our podcast. He does more high level sort of things like that. But, if somebody needed, job coaching, I could probably refer them to somebody. So that's the point. And that's, again, kind of the brief, I guess, explanation of what we're doing with the collaboration. But it's been super cool. And, the people Heather and I met, that's how we met, was through that process of trying to build that.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be a part of the collaboration. And I think it's cool for many reasons. Like you said, there's a hub of people with a variety of backgrounds and expertise. And just so folks who are listening, let us know where they can find our collaboration.
Okay. The name of the collaboration is pretty simple. It's Coaching Services Group. And that's our Instagram title, or our Instagram handle. And also our website is coachingservicesgroup.com. If you go to the website, that's going to have a link to each one of our individual, bios, and also our individual websites. Our Instagram page is basically, I'll call it a placeholder. It doesn't really have a lot of information, but we did that on purpose. The reason that we even started the Instagram page was simply because most of us, I think, if with the exception of one in the group, is very active on Instagram. So it gives us an opportunity to, tag the coaching page, and then people can pop from that right into the website. But the website itself, once again, is coachingservicesgroup.com. And from there, you're going to see right on the homepage, every single one of us. Click into our bios. You can read a little bit about what each individual does. But then also, I highly recommend that people take a minute. If an individual seems interesting based on their background, click in. Visit their website. If you have any questions, if you don't see what you're looking for, you can send an email to any one of us. We'll respond. Or there's a contact section at the bottom of the website that goes to a general email that at the moment, I'm the one that's going to man that email. But if you're looking for a particular type of coach or have a particular type of issue, throw it out there to us and let us take a look. And one way or the other, if somebody within that group is not able to help or can't specifically identify with what you're dealing with, we'll find somebody. And I'm not talking about from a business standpoint, but I mean, granted, yeah, it is. But I mean, from a knowledge standpoint and from an opportunity standpoint for an individual. So you've got this individual that walks into this website, they've got all these choices. And then within each one of those choices, think about the number of people that Heather, and that I know, and that all of our other, collaborators know. Somebody has to know somebody that can help that individual. And that's our point. But we feel that, again, strength in numbers to help as many people as possible. I did a couple of different things when I was looking at trying to bring people together with this. Michelle, one of the individuals that's involved, she and I talked about a year ago when I was kind of like pre-planning this type of stuff. So she and I had talked, and then when things started coming into place, we had a deeper conversation. My former sister-in-law, she and I had talked probably 8 months ago, randomly, and we were at a family event, my grandson's birthday party, I think, and started talking about some stuff. And I'm like, this is what I'm planning. And she's like, reach out to me. I want to know more. And then I went on LinkedIn, I went on Instagram, and I just said, this is what we're doing. We're trying to do this stuff. Heather, you're the only person that actually responded to the Instagram posting that I did. And I posted it quite a bit, that, hey, we're collaborating, let's talk. And then I reached out to, on LinkedIn, 15, 20 people, maybe. Two people responded to that: Leah, the one that it does with the divorce recovery, and then Denise, who has not only a therapy background, but also has a coaching business. It was interesting. And then one other gentleman, Travis, he was a guest on our podcast about a year ago. But what kind of blew my mind, and my point with bringing that up, is that I didn't get a lot of responses, which was weird. Even people that were just kind of mildly interested to be like, what is this over here? And maybe people are cautious, or maybe people are more competitive in this type of thing. There's so many people out there that are doing coaches. It's like podcasting. Everyone has a podcast, right? Um, First time we had somebody on our podcast or approached us that wanted to be on our podcast that did their own, my thought was, why would they want to be on another podcast? And then it clicked. It's the same concept. This person's over here, we're over here. We talk about whatever, and then we both get that exposure. Same thing here. You and I, it's not really exposure from the podcast standpoint, but we have an opportunity to bring about awareness and talk about things, so why not work together is my point. So,
Yeah, I think that's a lot of great points. I think the collaboration for me comes from, 20 something years of helping people. And it's similar to like community and sobriety in some way. You can't do it alone. Only you can do it. Meaning, when I was helping folks in the social work capacity, I knew right away if, I don't know that I can help this person, but what I can do is find someone who can. And that has been instrumental in my former clients' success, if you will, and my own success. It's the more people you know, the more people you can help. Because I'm really good at complex family dynamics. But what I'm not good at is teenagers. So knowing the people who are good with teenagers, or like in your business, just for today coaching, I know your strengths, so I can say, here you go. And I think it takes some humility to be able to say that, especially in the helping field, because people tend to think they can do it all. They have a good bit of savior complex. And after many years of helping people through social work, that's just a fast track to burnout. And it can be tricky when you're helping folks if it's not your area, or hey, this is something that either triggers me or I'm not very skilled at, can get sticky. So I think that's a further reason to collaborate. But I say that to say I think that comes from years of calling anybody who would answer the phone to help folks and just trying my hardest to find folks who could help in a way that I knew I couldn't or wasn't skilled in the area in which they needed help. So I'm glad we're collaborating.
yeah, and the other thing too is that, and I guess I'll just speak for myself, but I've met a lot of people over the years that are, of course, alcoholics and drug addicts. We tend to be very strong-willed people. We tend to be, if nothing else, a little egotistical, you know, and we're very confident people, and all of those things. Here's the cool part: is that in our active addiction, those were the things that brought us down, because we felt we could do everything. We were egotistical. We had all these different things, and we're confident, so we weren't seeing what the real problem was. But once we get sober, we can take all those things, bring the ego down. Don't get me wrong. And I still, that's one of my, as they say, character defects. I tend to be a bit of an egotist, but I can use, if I turn ego into confidence, it's a strong tool for me, and I'm not afraid to talk to people. I'm not afraid to reach out to people, and I can use that confidence. That my mindset sometimes is, well, okay, so I'm not just going to do anything. I'm not just going to jump out in front of traffic and figure, I probably won't get hit. I'm mindful of those things, but I'm also willing to take risks that I wasn't willing to do, years ago, because I had that confidence. So when I first talked to Michelle, when we were she and I were the first ones that had talked on this. And then she had a couple of people that she was thinking about referring. And I said, okay, I said, do you want to get together on a meeting? And she's like, you can go ahead and do that, because I don't mind doing these things. I don't mind doing the face to face. That's my background, Whereas if somebody really needed more of the detailed things, we're in the process of putting together a couple of webinars that are going to be free and available for everyone, to take a look at. And one of them is we're going to get somebody who knows what they're talking about, an expert in to talk to us about the medical side, of treatment. I know nothing about the medicine side of it. Nothing. I'm a grassroots, just come from the wherever, type of alcoholic that learned, how to live sober and get sober and live sober, through these programs. But I never used any medication except the detox when it was necessary, when they used it. But beyond that, I don't understand, all the medicine side of things. So Sonia, one of the people that we're collaborating with, knows somebody who knows some stuff, and then even setting up the webinars that we're going to do. Sonia's the one that's taking the lead on all of that stuff. I know I could do it, but not that I don't want to, but it's not my strong suit to try to organize all these things. She's in the process of trying to organize schedules for 8 different people. It's not easy. But then she's going to moderate one and then have the gentleman come in for the other one. So again, when you take all these different things, even at this point, these 8 different brains that we have, these 8 different individuals with all the different backgrounds. Now, again, not just from the recovery side or the coaching side or the therapy side, but what have we done as individuals? What from a background or a business side of things can we all bring together? And what a great opportunity, because again, you take years of experience, and put that all together. And once again, and you made this clear before, and I agree with you, is that it's not competitive. We're all out here looking for each other. What can we do to help everyone in this group to then help other people? And then everyone succeeds, so it's just a really, really cool setup. I'm super excited to see how all this stuff grows, even if it's passively. We don't have to get out there and do, big things in a super short period of time. It can happen. Slow is still growth, and I learned that in recovery also.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having that thought and for creating the collaboration. I'm really honored to be a part. So, in terms of just for today coaching and what you're doing, let us know where people can find you and how they can reach out to you.
Well, on Instagram, I've got a Instagram page, which is just for today coaching. And that's my Instagram page. I also have a website, which is justfortodaycs.com. And, that website can be clicked through from my Instagram page also. I'm active on that web page, or I'm sorry, on my Instagram page. But the other thing too is that, through the collaboration, the coachingservicesgroup.com, you can get a hold of me and Heather and all the other individuals that are involved. And that will go to, that'll go to our webpage as the website has more content, which is, I think, the way it's supposed to be.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Bill.
You're welcome. And like I said, the biggest thing that I want to leave everyone with is that even if you have a question, about where you are in your life and you think you might need some help, regardless of what that help might be, please take a look at our collaboration website, which again is coachingservicesgroup.com. Take a look at what each one of us does and see if there might be something that we might be able to help you with. Or worst case scenario, shoot us an email. There's again that contact page on the website. If you have a question, we can at least point you in the right direction. Don't be hesitant to ask, and you're not necessarily committing yourself to anything, but at least commit to asking a question and trying to get some direction.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living My Restless Life. Head over to Instagram and follow According to HPG to stay connected to the show. Go get your mammograms.